Greetings, Commanders, and welcome to not a Super Cruise news this week. We've actually got something I would say, I don't know about you, Bruce, I would say even better than a Super Cruise news. We've got a pretty special Discovery Scanner episode for you. So before we get going, first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I'm Zach, one of the community managers here on Elite Dangerous at Frontier, and I'm also joined, primarily by another community manager here. We've got Bruce. How are you doing today, Bruce?
Hi, Zach. I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. How are you today?
I'm not bad, I've been looking forward to this stream, as has a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot of commanders in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us. Lots of O7s, I see. Thank you so much. When you said we have something even better than the Super Cruise news, I was about to make a joke and say that's preposterous. But no, the truth is we actually do have something very exciting today, which you can probably tell from the title. Actually, we have a couple of guests that are going to be joining us very briefly, and we're going to talk to them about the development of Odyssey. Obviously, the alpha is still underway, and we're about to enter phase 4. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, about the alpha as a whole, and a little bit about what's to come when Odyssey launches.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, before we get straight into the good stuff, we just want to get a bit of housekeeping out of the way. So first of all, please remember, we are working from home. If the stream crashes, we'll try and get back as soon as possible. If there's issues, just let us know in chat and we'll try and fix them. And there'll be a point in this stream where we cut to a back soon screen to do some messing about behind the scenes. Don't worry, we will come back from that. So yeah, phase 4 is happening tomorrow. If you do want some details on that, you can put exclamation point phase 4 in the chat. And also, I believe we've announced that we're extending the alpha, and you can put exclamation point extension in the chat to find out more about that one. But let's not wait too much longer, Bruce. Do you want to quickly mention Twitch drops before we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. So many of you will likely have seen already that we're offering Twitch drops yet again. We're expecting to have drops pretty much for every stream between now and the actual launch, which of course was announced for the 19th of next month. So yeah, make sure to tune in. There's going to be free stuff. Obviously, hopefully you'll be tuning in for other reasons, but there's that bonus as well. Today it's going to be the Wings nameplate pack to print on the side of your ship, and then there's also the purple flight suit, which I don't know if we have an image to hand. I don't think we do, but we've shown it in previous streams. It's very nice. But yeah, if you want to be walking around in one of those, stick around for a little bit and you'll be able to get one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so should we get started then?
Yeah, let's do it. I think it's time to welcome our first guest with a smooth transition.
That is a smooth transition right there.
Beautiful. Welcome, Piers.
Hello.
So for anybody who hasn't met Piers before, I think we've had you. Have we had you on stream before, Piers, or is this your debut? I'm trying to remember.
I think this might be the stream debut.
I've
been on the Dev Diaries a few times. So.
Right, of course. People might recognize you from the Dev Diaries, but for anyone who hasn't seen those or doesn't remember you, could you quickly introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, I'm Piers Jackson. I'm the game director on Odyssey. I joined Elite probably about 16 months ago now, and the crux of my job is to set the project vision, to kind of really from the core define what Odyssey is going to be and how it interacts with Elite Dangerous and Horizons as a wider whole. Day to day, I work with the project leads, particularly the design team, to shape the game. And I also help production team just help set the priorities of what order we're going to tackle things in.
Okay, excellent. Could you? So you mentioned that you joined Frontier about 16 months ago. I suppose the majority of that then has actually been during this, well, frankly, awful situation that has been going on around the world. And it's something we get asked all the time. So now and then, members of the community team like myself, Zach or Arthur will go on a stream with one of our content creators. And something we always get asked is, what's it like working during the pandemic? Now, for us, it's one thing. Obviously, we can do a lot of the same things like streaming or interacting with the community. Obviously, there are some differences. But I'm curious to know, and I know a lot of the chat would be interested to know how game direction and development has been affected by the pandemic. Would you care to give some insight?
Yeah, it's been quite a learning experience. I think obviously we're not in a special case here. Everyone was pretty much thrown into this with almost no notice. The team has risen to the challenge, really. Looking back on it, I think we could have been particularly worried about sort of stumbling going into work from home, but everyone got on really, really well with it. We had a bunch of initial tech challenges, just setting up, we're not on an office network anymore, moving data backwards and forwards, getting builds, having them distributed out, particularly to the QA team. But those are the technical issues, and I think we've, for the most part, overcome them. Beyond that, I think communication would be the obvious thing. Having these things stuck on your head and talking to people all day is hard work. But again, people have risen to it. We've worked through the problems, and actually some elements of this are now really, really streamlined. I think some of the things we probably do miss out on are the more organic elements of just bouncing ideas backwards and forwards, some of the collaboration, and maybe the slightly more tactile nature of actually being able to sit around with a pad or a keyboard and mouse and actually discuss things with each other. That's probably the biggest struggle we've had working from home, and one of the things I'm kind of most looking forward to getting back into the office, at least from time to time, to being able to do.
Sure. I know interestingly, it's not necessarily been all bad. I know we're quite lucky in a sense that obviously working on Elite Dangerous, it's something that we obviously after the initial transition period we were able to do with, I don't want to say relative ease, but I know compared to like a lot of industries, for example, it was relatively easy where perhaps, okay, there is the struggle of missing that social element or the sort of in-person collaboration, but we are quite fortunate in the sense that we could make it work.
Yeah, I'd agree. We certainly don't have anything to complain about on that front. There's people who've been hit a lot harder than the tech industry have. It's been a challenge, but one that I think we've risen to. So yeah,
sure. Right. So I'm sure everyone in the chat knows that we've had the PC Alpha for Elite Dangerous Odyssey out for 3 weeks now. I want to say. I'm trying to remember the exact date it came out.
That sounds right.
3 weeks, yeah, let's call it 3 weeks ish. And obviously we're about to enter phase 4. So if anyone somehow isn't sort of aware of all of this and hasn't been watching any of our content or our content creators' content or reading anything about it, could we explain a little bit about how we conducted this alpha and why we've got these 4 phases, what they each mean, and why we're releasing features the way that we have done, just to sort of share that aspect of the development process.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of decisions gone into the process of revealing the alpha and the steps we've gone through. Obviously, we started in phase 1 in a single system with just using the shuttles as a mechanism to get around. We knew we were going to get a fairly heavy influx of people. We also knew we wanted to give our server team the occasional heart attack, so let's cram everyone into a single space, make them use a flight system that hasn't been stress tested with that many people, and really give the game a run out and actually get some feedback from the players at that point as to how the shuttle system works and where it doesn't. What can we do to improve it? Phase 2 really was us wanting then to allow a bit of an expansion, to start bringing ships back into the equation, because all of a sudden that opens up a whole new route for people to do things that we haven't necessarily thought of, or push the game in ways that we haven't quite tested. And then we also revealed combat at the same time, so we brought our combat suit on and allowed people to really engage more in sort of the hardcore combat side of things. Week 3, that's the case of bringing on the exploration side of things. So the organics had been present at that point, but with the expansion of the bubble that we were allowing people to move around in, we get them to test out the collection and hand-in route for organics. So it was a series of phased activities where we could take measurements along the way. We could understand how people were engaging, where they were struggling, where some of our economic decisions might not have been quite right. It also allowed us to stress test a lot of the systems. Is the game falling over here? Does the user interface work in a way that people are understanding? So there was method behind all of the madness, so to speak. And with phase 4, what we're really wanting to do at that point is to test the migration of everyone's save games effectively. So we took a snapshot, I think at the tail end of last week, of where everyone was at, and then we will move them temporarily into our bubble. This means that when we actually launch, we'll have tested all of those migration services properly, and of course the people will now have even more equipment to break things and try and exploit the Odyssey experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I suppose partly it's about trying to strike a balance between giving players free rein to enjoy Odyssey, but also focusing it enough with sort of the slow release of the features to make sure that they are being sufficiently, like you say, stress tested with enough people trying to do the same sort of things at once.
Yeah, we would have probably overwhelmed the process if we opened up the wider area and allowed all of the content in. And we've only got a small subset of the content in any case. Even now in the alpha, we don't have the full game present.
Sure. Now that you mentioned not having the full game present, actually reminds me of something I did want to mention, which was branching. And we did bring this up shortly before the stream, just to get sort of an idea across that maybe hasn't been entirely clear about different versions of Elite and how we develop it with various branches and versions. Could you explain that a little bit to anyone who doesn't really understand it? Not me, of course.
I'll do my best. So if the alpha is now about 3 weeks old, I think a couple of weeks before that, maybe a little bit longer, we took a snapshot of what is called Trunk. Trunk's where the main game development is actually occurring. So we created a branch, and that branch itself developed a little bit to create the pocket of gameplay that we wanted the alpha to exist in. Now, the other thing about the branch is it allows us to focus on the stability of it exclusively, whilst there is still quite a huge amount of churn going on Trunk. So the development cycle that's gone on the alpha branch has been very, very focused and quite narrow in terms of the content we're injecting. Has been very, very specifically selected for things we want to try, and the bugs we've been fixing are the ones that people have been most impacted by. Now, if you pull back the veil from that a little bit and have a look at what's going on Trunk, we've got thousands and thousands of bug fixes going on and an awful large amount of content churn. So the Trunk and branch builds have separated and diverged quite dramatically. So where people are at in the alpha now is almost like a frozen moment in time that has slightly evolved. Whereas Trunk is where we're pushing towards full release. It has the much wider range of content in it. Things like all the new weapon classes, all of the additional settlements, because we've only released a small number of them, and of course, actually the full settlement bakeout of the entire bubble, which is quite vast.
Right. So I suppose in layman's terms, it's to say that actually, no, I think you communicated it really, really well. So the version of the alpha, well, the version of Odyssey that players are testing in the alpha right now is true, but only in the sense that it was up until that point, and now it's been developed since. And by the time launch comes, there will be, a significant number of changes and improvements that players can expect.
It's very dated, and we knew it'd be dated at the point that we planned the alpha. It was a snapshot that we would test against. As an example of something that obviously we're going to talk about a little bit later on, everything to do with planets was a frozen moment in time, and we have not updated any of the planetary work from that point on. So as Kay will later talk about, there are new changes that have occurred in the planets that no one will have seen in the alpha.
Right. Well, we very much look forward to hearing from Kay all about that. For anyone who's just joined us since, we're currently talking to Piers, game director of Elite Dangerous Odyssey. And we're also going to have the wonderful Dr. Kay Ross on for the latter half to talk about planetary tech and other stuff about Odyssey as well, not necessarily strictly Planetary tech. But all right then. You mentioned some of the things that will be in Odyssey by the full launch that players might not have, well, won't have seen during the alpha, one of which is plasma weaponry. Obviously, that one has a tiny little asterisk next to it in terms of players not having seen it, because some of them might have very briefly. But that is one of the exciting things that is coming. Would you like to sort of describe plasma weaponry a little bit, and for anyone who's interested in the combat elements of Odyssey, what they have to look forward to there?
So yeah, it really fulfills the third ammunition type within our weapon set. So we have the kinetic weapons, great against body armor. We've got the laser weapons, great at taking down shields, and then our plasma weaponry, which kind of sits as a happy medium, and means that to get the best effect, you don't necessarily need to swap your weapon. But we've also taken the plasma a little bit further. So there's a couple of weapons within that class that are different to the kinetic and laser weapons. You know, we have a rifle type class, which is much longer ranged, and then we have what I guess is a futuristic shotgun class, so something very powerful, slow firing, and up close. So they also have a different feel. They fulfill a different niche within the combat triangle. Right.
Okay. So I don't even know where to go from there. I think that's great. It's nice that it fills a gap, I suppose, that is somewhat left by lasers and kinetic. I like the idea of having. I suppose the idea is not necessarily it is better than the other two, but that it fills a gap in that. Okay, if I don't want to swap between so much, but I'm willing to accept perhaps slightly less damage, let's say, on either shields or armor, that plasma fills that niche. But I also like the different gun types offered there as well. It's quite a nice range and fills out the whole arsenal, if you will. It's been really important to make sure that all the weapons have their own role. You know, we don't want to create a subclass of weapons that people don't have a use for. So yeah, the plasma have their own tactical advantages and disadvantages. Sure. So something we'd like to thank the players for, and actually have done, I like to think, fairly consistently throughout the alpha, so. is for their feedback and suggestions, which have been wonderful and consistent throughout, and have really sort of helped us in terms of understanding not just where the issues are, but also what kind of things you would like to see, and all of that. How valuable has the feedback been for the development team? And do you have any comments sort of on the vast amounts of it that we've received, and sort of how we go about managing it? Yeah, it's been essential. You know, there wasn't any point in doing the alpha other than to tick some boxes on making sure the servers work correctly, and we've eliminated some crash bugs. If we weren't going to take on board the feedback, both positive and negative, and I think it is worth highlighting that, you know, the things that people have liked, you know, we've gone, okay, either we need to plus those or leave them be, and the things that people haven't liked, okay, well, how if possible can we actually change those to improve them in a way that's is beneficial to people? I mean, some of the things that we have been looking at are the economic balance. You know, we've been watching people play this over long periods of time now and try to upgrade weapons, how frequent they're finding things like the loot drops in settlements. So the team's been taking on board all of that feedback, and, you know, actually trawling the data that's coming back through the servers to get a better understanding of where we should be setting these numbers. You know, we're getting a much larger data set here. Beyond that, you know, obviously we've got issue tracker, so people are flagging things there. We've got a fantastic community team that keep an eye on all the forums and start flagging things to us when they're seeing things that are problematic. Yeah, so there's many sources of data coming in from different angles. We try and keep on top of as much of it. I think we've done a reasonable job during the alpha of trying to react to some of the things that people are seeing, you know, and fixing those and deploy them in hot patches as quickly as possible. Some things we're having to save for release where we can address them because they're just bigger changes. Sure. So in terms of things that we have actually adjusted or fixed already, I've got a couple here in my notes that I wanted to bring up. Are there any particular issues or bugs that spring to mind? Because obviously, being an alpha, we were expecting a couple of things to slip through the cracks for players to find and do, and obviously that's just part of the process for helping us iron them out. I have a couple in here, but I don't know if you wanted to recount any that particularly stick in your mind.
We've had a couple of classic exploits. The one where we had people getting into the concourse by dropping in through the roof of the planet port with their guns drawn. I'm sure that was a bit of a shock to the system, to anyone that was in there thinking it was safe at the time, but that was quite a cool exploit. We've seen some good videos of people taking ships and flying them through AI that are being dropped out of drop ships into the conflict zones. And yes, we will be looking at a way of sorting that out for release as well. Relogging. That's another one. We were sort of aware going into the alpha that there were some exploits of relogging. Watching those occur during the alphas refocused us a little bit into how we can close down some of those loopholes. So there was a few exploits in there that were pretty funny to watch at the time. And Peter the Sleeper, who'd have thought?
Yeah, of course, the now famous Peter the Sleeper.
Did you expect Peter the Sleeper to get such a sort of, what's the word? Reaction, such a positive reaction, I guess.
I didn't even know he was called Peter, so no.
Do we know who on the graphics team modelled Peter the Sleeper or put him together?
I think we'll have to give it as a team collaboration. There's a few bits and pieces going on in there from a number of departments. I know the animation team, since Peter has become the celebrity that he is, have done some additional work on his animation set. So.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Excellent. Some other things that we have tweaked and adjusted as we've gone along then, particularly include things like combat changes, stealth, and crime. I've sort of lumped them together because they're all similar in theme, but would you like to talk a little bit about some of those changes that we made?
Yeah, sure. If I start with the combat, so there were a few things that we went into the alpha knowing were slightly problematic for us, and they became quite apparent early on when we were watching people's first attempts to actually take on the AI. We had a behavior in there very early doors, which was swarming, and it was really that the AI were a bit too aggressive, which can be all right on internal areas of buildings, but it's really, really problematic externally. So we softened that off a bit and played with the combat ranges, forcing some of them out, which gave the AI a lot more of a standoffish approach, which I think helped. A number of other things we noticed in there. So grenade throwing wasn't something the AI were doing enough. They weren't able to apply pressure to the player when they were behind cover, or particularly when they're on top of roofs. That's not something we've fixed in the alpha, but is something that we've been working on for release. So actually having the AI so they can throw grenades with variable force, and they have to take into consideration the gravity level of the planet as well. It's quite an interestingly complicated trajectory that they have to throw these things on, but they can now put grenades into cover or onto rooftops if they lose sight of the player to create a bit of flushing behavior. So there's a few things like that we've done with combat. Tightening up some of the aiming, allowing them a better shot when the player is standing behind cover or half height cover. Again, I think that one's going to make release. It's not in the alpha at the minute. Stealth, I think there were a few issues with stealth. We had a couple of nasty bugs which we hadn't spotted when we first went into alpha with stealth. The AI's perception was a little bit too good. They were actually capable of hearing the player when they'd lost line of sight of them for a bit too far, which meant people thought they'd escaped the AI, but actually it would then come after them to the last point they'd seen them and gun them down. So it made stealth feel quite unfair. And there's also been some significant improvements to the room occlusion system, which again are not in the alpha, but will make final release that mean that you can move around in buildings without necessarily triggering AI that are behind the walls. So I think that will make quite a big difference to how people can actually approach missions quietly.
Nice. Sorry to interject there. Actually, something's just occurred to me with combat in Odyssey. I know design-wise, a lot of the principles were kind of brought forward from the base game, especially in terms of like the combat triangle idea with shields and hull and lasers and kinetic, that kind of thing. I'm curious to know if any of the sort of existing systems or code that existed for for Elite Combat. Was that useful at all in actually designing the AI and the combat on the ground, or was that more from the ground up when you're sort of past the design stage?
I think the vast majority of it's been from the ground up, although the principles and philosophy behind the design is quite consistent with the space game. The actual code behind it is probably quite unique.
Sure. Sorry to cut you off there. I think you're about to tell us a little bit about crime and some of the changes that we've made to criminal activity that players may or may not wish to be involved in.
Yeah, so again, and I think we announced it at the beginning of the alpha, it was something we wanted to try. We wanted to find out what people's reaction to this would be. So we went in with crime being quite harsh and quite punishing. Literally everything you picked up, if it went into your backpack and you were then scanned, would cause an immediate reaction from the guards. As the alpha's gone on, we've sort of toned that down a little bit. So now a number of the kind of the theft crimes are only actually crimes if you're seen doing it. You can actually, if you can get it into your backpack, you've kind of got away with it. So that was it was kind of a planned reaction. We thought this might be the case, but we did want to actually see how the players reacted to it. And when we saw how it was panning out, we softened it out quite significantly.
Okay. I suppose, I mean, that's one of those things where seeing how players actually did interact with the AI and where they felt things were maybe a bit too harsh or whatnot really helped in sort of balancing, the feel of things.
Yeah, now's the time to find it out. You know, we sometimes it's worth going out there with the lever pulled quite hard in one direction to actually see how people who are going to play the game are going to react to it, and then we can ease back, because we obviously want to do this with the live game.
Sure. Something I wanted to touch on briefly, although I know we don't want to go too much into this because we have a lot of things we'd like to keep a surprise, let's say, for launch, for players to discover for themselves. But obviously engineering is going to be an aspect of Odyssey as well, in terms of upgrading your equipment with attachments and also just generally making them stronger. Could you shine a little bit of light on what players might be able to do or expect with engineering in Odyssey, but only as much as sort of we would like to, without spoiling anything?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of examples. So yes, we've got 9 new on foot engineers that you can meet via Odyssey. They all can make mods for your suit or for your weapons, and the mods are kind of generic in the way they work. You can apply the mod to any of your weapons. Just to give you an example of some of the things that you can have on there, we can have a variety of scopes. We can have things that tweak the handling performance, such as the magazine size, the rate at which you can draw a weapon. I know that feels quite sluggish in the game. It's slightly sluggish for a reason, because it allows us enough scope to actually put the mod in there. Some of the probably slightly more cool elements, we do have some suppressors, one that works in an atmosphered environment and one that works outdoors, which will help significantly if you want to have silent takedowns. And I think my favorite actually is we've got a backpack reloading device. So for anyone that's doing weapon switching, they can chuck their weapon into the backpack by holstering it, and over a short period of time that will automatically reload the clip for them. So it can make the weapons switching a lot more efficient.
That's very cool. Actually, that last one might be my favorite as well. Sort of an action reload thing going on, because I've noticed myself a couple of times. Zach and I and Arthur have done a few conflict zones now and then, and who shoots who becomes a bit of a confusing mess. But I noticed that if I forget to reload before trying to take on another NPC, I'll often not have enough of a clip left to finish them off. I know partly that's down to using sort of the base weapons unengineered, but it's also I need to be reloading, so I might have to get one of those backpacks for myself.
This will help you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Something that I also wanted to bring up, because a lot of players, understandably, they're being dropped into Odyssey in the alpha, and it's very new. It's not, I don't say completely different, because there are lots of elements which are the same and similar, but the experience is fresh from Elite Dangerous, and I know there's taking a little bit of getting used to. We're hoping that that transition for existing players post-launch is going to be eased by a tutorial, which will explain a lot of the mechanics, not just explain, but actually actively take people through a lot of the different mechanics and have them do it and understand how these things work. So hopefully that will be a nicer onboarding process for them. Could you tell us a little bit about what that looks like, and yeah, how the tutorial is going to be?
Well, it looks fantastic. The way it's going to play out, for anyone that's new to Odyssey or new to Elite or is starting a new commander, you'll be taken on a mission, and that mission really will step you through most of the game mechanics that you need to learn to understand how to play Odyssey. You know, all of the powering things up and down, clearing atmospheres, all of that, and it'll step you through it on a powered down settlement, and you know, maybe some people will turn up at the end and give you a bit of combat experience. So there's a good narrative moment there, and before we take you off to your starting location. For anyone that's already got an existing commander, we onboard them into Odyssey via exactly the same mechanic, but allow this to occur as if it was a flashback before they very first started to play Elite. And when they complete the tutorial, they'll then be put back into their ship or SRV or wherever it was that they were at the time they were last playing.
Nice. So it's available for anyone to go through if they wish. I think the very nice thing about it as well is, and we've touched on this idea a couple times, is it's going to allow sort of a new breed of player, if you will, with Odyssey. Whereas, you know, if they start playing the game as a new commander with Odyssey, they might not have a ship to begin with. They might just be a commander who actually goes through that experience of doing missions on foot until they find the ship they want to start out with. But they can do that at any point.
Absolutely. I mean, it's entirely possible to play Odyssey without buying your own ship. In fact, the first time you go to the shipyard, you will be asked to effectively undertake the ship tutorial that people know perfectly well now from Elite, and then they will be able to get on their first ship.
It's amazing. So I realise we're about halfway through the stream, so we're going to very shortly introduce our second guest. But before we do, Piers, do you have anything that you would like to say to our players? The ones who have tested the alpha for us and sort of enjoyed that experience so far, given their feedback, or anyone who's just seen Odyssey and is excited to play?
Just a big thank you from me and everyone on the team. Apologies for all the bugs you may have encountered along the way, and thank you for finding them. Yeah, keep sending your feedback. We do look at it. We get to the feedback as quickly as we can. And yeah, big thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Piers. We've really enjoyed it, and hopefully the chat have gained some new insights they haven't heard before about Odyssey and the way that the game has been developed. So thank you very much. We'll leave you there, but we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So what we'll do now, chat, is we'll swap into a back soon screen. Give us a couple of minutes, and we'll be right back. Thank you. Welcome back, Commanders. Thank you for sticking with us while we did a bit of technical. What's a good word? Like jiggery pokery? Is that a good word? Is that a bad word? Either way, that's what we did, right?
It's certainly a phrase.
I think I've said that before. I think I was on with Stephen, and he also pulled me up on that phrase. But yeah, it's one that I've stuck with. So yeah, so as you can see,
coming from Stephen, though, isn't it? I mean, he said
well,
all sorts
yeah,
of nonsense that no one could understand.
That's why we got rid of him,
Sorry,
right?
I'm not going to derail the stream.
Yeah, so as you can see, chat, we're joined by the fantastic Dr. K. Ross. So welcome, Dr. K. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure as always.
That's all right.
To be here.
You're very much a firm favourite, I believe, of the chat.
I will try to be on my best behaviour then. Hello, chat.
So, Dr. K, if you could, for people who might just be, joining our streams for the first time and haven't seen you on a different one, could you give us a quick rundown of yourself, your job role, what you do at Frontier?
Sure thing. So currently, I'm a principal render programmer at Frontier, and I'm the lead or co-lead of the render team on Elite Dangerous. I've been with Frontier for 8 years now. I started off as a programmer, did a bunch of core stuff, gameplay stuff, and then rendery stuff. Mm-hmm. And however, what I'm mostly known for there on the project is things involving Stellar Forge, mm-hmm. the thing running in the background of the game, generating the galaxy, the stars, the planets, all the little bits. Now, I'm not the only person to have worked on it, though. I always want to stress this. I always got to make sure it's a lovely team collaborative effort across many departments. Mm-hmm. But I have had my fingers in it for 8 years now.
Wow.
Before that, I was a physicist, just decided to make a little sideways jump.
Just
Hence
casually.
The Doctor. I'm not just making illusions of grandeur. That's a leave over from my old job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, every time that we have you on stream, it's always interesting to listen to. So chat, if you haven't already, I would recommend maybe after the stream or at the weekend, whenever you've got some time, go back and watch the Discovery Scanner that Dr. K was on. I guess probably a couple of months ago back at this point, where we first talked about some of the changes that were coming with Odyssey. It's certainly an interesting one if you want to find out more about Stellar Forge particularly, and a bit more of granular detail on the base changes that Dr. K and the team have made. So today we're going to talk a bit about stuff that you may have seen parts of, and stuff that is yet to come. But particularly if you want to find out, from a ground level, maybe the changes that Dr. K made, check out that stream as well. So, Dr. K, I know that obviously you've been keenly watching players as they take part in the alpha. I know it's probably, I don't want to say a frightening experience, but probably also an exciting. How do you feel when you're watching players, I guess on streams and stuff, discover these planets that you've put through the forge and seeing on the other side?
Oh gosh, it was a very tense few days when it first started, dropping people getting their hands on the first few phases. Because this is something that myself and many other people have been working on for years in the background now. And you get a somewhat of a tunnel vision is not a great descriptor for it, but you are so focused on this one thing for so long, and you pick out things, and they're only there in your mind, in your perception, because you've been staring at it for that long.
Yeah.
What's it going to look like to someone coming at it fresh? Are they going to enjoy it? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be problematic? But no, it has been so far a delight to see people playing it, to see the streamers going through it, providing their feedback, as Piers says, good or bad, but mostly seeing people enjoying it, being excited for it. It really does reignite that flame. It really does keep that spark going for staying on a project for as long as I've been on it. So yes, thank you everyone, all of you. You're awesome.
Was there anything that I guess surprised you when you saw players, testing out the new planets, something that you didn't expect players to like, maybe, or didn't expect them to find so quickly? Or I'm just wondering if that was a thing.
Well, I guess in terms of surprise, I did see someone in the chat mentioning something which has come to light recently, where someone found a mega cliff on a planet where perhaps there shouldn't be. So that was certainly a surprise. That was a
Oh no.
Ooh, kind of thing. But on the whole, planet-specific stuff that they've been finding. I have seen a few people still manage to do some fancy ground flight stuff. I always love watching people do that. So more to talk about on that a little later on. Most of the stuff I've seen people trying out have been around the settlements or in the social spaces. But you do see the odd person loading up on power cells and going for a long trek across the planet to see what they could see. People coming across organics, things like that, which we didn't expect. There was certain phases. So, yeah.
I think we'll definitely be seeing more of that, obviously, once we go into the full release of players actually, like you said, kitting up with their energy cells, getting out there and just staying away from the settlements maybe and checking out, some of the stuff that most people probably won't see if they're sticking to the settlements. I think that's going to come in the next few weeks after launch, I would suspect. But before we move into some of the really cool stuff that we've got to have a look at and talk about, just want to give us a question that I guess comes up a lot with an alpha, and then we have explained is optimization. And obviously it's not entirely up to you to optimize an entire release, but what what are your thoughts on I guess performance optimization and things in the alpha so far?
A lovely question. Now, it is something I was apprehensive about, seeing how it would run on the varying hardware, varying vendors across the world. Now, when we're in the big office and working together, we have something called the C Lab, where there's rapid testing on various combinations of hardware. Working from home, that's a lot more difficult now. And so whilst we were doing our best, there are some edge cases not tested. So this was oh gosh, how's it going to go? But on the whole, whilst there have been some frame rate not perfect yet, it is an alpha. We're still working on it. I haven't seen my worst fears realized. let's put it like that. So it's going okay. However, in the build that people have had in the alphas, they haven't had, well, first of all, the full optimization paths. But then there's, as Piers said, there's various features disabled, various features in older versions of it. I think it even came up in the stream a little earlier, did it, occlusion. I did see there was a little bit of discourse at one point about, is Elite actually doing any occlusion? Why isn't it occluding these things around the settlement? I mean, we do have an occlusion system. It's one of the first things I made sure was on the plan to go in for doing a first-person kind of game like this. However, what a lot of folks are seeing is, say, around the settlement buildings, the objects around the settlements, they need specific geometry authoring in for the occlusion to work. Some of that wasn't there in the finalized state. There were also aspects of the occlusion system where we would turn certain parts of it off because there were some bugs, say, regarding how things have been authored. The 0 point of their transform, where they exist in space, was maybe offset, or maybe something wasn't registering to the right room, and it was better for us to put the alpha out with the fine detailed occlusion turned off, rather than people see things popping in and out of existence and being all haywire. So yes, you will see improvements in the release by far, both from the additional time for optimizing and all of these things that we had cheekily turned off.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk a bit about some new Planetary tech, some stuff that if you've been playing the alpha, you may have seen, a sort of, I'll let Dr. K explain properly because I don't know what I'm talking about, but more of a part way kind of version of the Planetary tech compared to the final finish thing. So as we talk about it, what I'm going to do, Dr. K, is I'm going to play some of the images that you kindly provided to us of some of the Planetary tech. So please enjoy, chat, as we do talk about them.
Now,
go on.
Sorry to warn chat as well. When I see the pictures come up, there's been a 10-second delay between what we've been saying. So I'll try to keep up, but I might be a little bit behind. Yes, thank you.
Don't worry about focusing on I mean, if something catches your eye, please do mention it. But I guess the first thing we want to quickly talk about is observable features. So this is something that, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to see observable features from space. What kind of things can players expect to be seeing, I guess, when they first approach planet, when they do a bit of scanning? Like, what's the sort of thing you can expect a player to see?
Sure. So the version of planets they had when the alpha went out, that had, let's call them placeholder versions of the noise graphs. That's the collection of modules that were put together to generate the planet itself. They had placeholder versions of some of the compute shaders, which those things controlled. And we were still working on polishing how everything fit together, how everything just I don't want to say just works. That's cheesy as hell. So what has been out there in alpha has been like a prototype state for the planets. And on a lot of those that see, the terrain is too noisy everywhere, or there's not enough distinction between the flatter, calmer areas and areas with more crystal deformation, shall we call it. So what we've been working towards in the polished version, in the newer version, is that yes, you should be able to identify distinct areas of the planet from space with your eyes, just with your optics there. So where are the ranges where you get the most upwelling of the crust? Where are the areas where you've seen most of it falling apart, crumbling? Where are the areas where there were ancient volcanic basins, and the cratering patterns and all of that? And I'm trying not to reference other brands and whatnot, but it's a bit of a meme, that whole, you see that mountain over there, you can go there. We're going to take it to the extreme version. So in the Horizons version of the tech, with the limited vertex resolution there, you couldn't see all of the details till you get closer up sometimes. You just had to see it appear as you got closer. Now you can see a lot more of that detail from further away, but also read it as in, oh yes, I can tell this is the type of terrain it is. These might be the kind of things I can find or expect to find if I go down there. And helps with that immersion.
I think it's one thing, personally playing the game, when you load into the Odyssey Alpha compared when you've just been playing Horizons, like you immediately notice the difference. And now I'm looking at these shots that I saw for the first time today, and it's almost like, I don't want to say the same level of upgrade, because I'm sure you'll disagree with that, but to me it feels like a huge step up again. I don't want to oversell it, but looking at these images, it does look, vastly improved from what's in the alpha.
So much can be done by ensuring you get the right contrast. Now, I don't mean white to black pixels on your screen. I mean, what is a flat piece of terrain next to a mountainous piece of terrain? How do they intersect? How do they blend into each other? When you've got those distinct regions, you get the contrast in a scene. That's when things start working nicely.
Yes, chat. I saw that you enjoyed those images, chat. Don't worry, I will bring them back shortly, and we do have some more that we are saving. But yeah, let's carry on. So as you mentioned, Dr. K, you mentioned things like canyons, and there's also things like Europa lines. I was just wondering, this is a personal sort of question. Is this done all procedurally, or do you have some kind of hand in a sort of, okay, we want a canyon to be here, or obviously you can't do that on an entire scale of the universe, so surely not. I'm just wondering, how does that work?
Okay, for a longer in-depth conversation on that, as they say, please do check out the VOD of the previous things. But in short, because there have been a couple of changes since that last one there, the major direction change in generating surfaces for what's not Odyssey. Tell me off if I say the wrong word. Odyssey has been that we allow the pre-baking of terrain shapes and then blending of them dynamically as we go, so that we're not constrained by trying to make a mountain shape out of maths, and it's always going to look like a little bit of maths. However, not everything is just these pre-baked out examples of terrain. Now, we do need to put in those deterministic procedural features as well. And one of the things that you'll see, which is new compared to the alpha, is more procedural canyoning again, and that there's a few of us who put in a big push for that, but mostly because of those canyon runners, those daredevil flight people, and yeah, lovely to put those back in, procedurally placed, but also their placement, their intensity is dependent on what's there from Stellar Forge, from those pre-baked pieces of terrain. So it's a good mixture of the two, a good balance of the two.
I mean, it's interesting. I'm sure you do see the maths in some of these like mountains, but take it from me, we really don't see any maths in these planets. They do look ridiculously good. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk a bit about scatter. So again, scatter was something that you mentioned on the last stream that you just brought up. Can you talk a bit about how that's going to be changed for launch? What that sort of involves?
Okie dokie. So the scatter system, for those who haven't seen the old video, is our GPU-based, compute shader-based system for analyzing a piece of terrain which has been created and placing additional detail items in there where they should be and where it makes sense for those items, be those rocks, be those VFX, be those organic things. And what people have seen in Alpha so far, again, is the scatter system in a prototype state from an older build. And there has been a lot of focus on the scatter system in the last few weeks, really, working on Trunk. And that is to ensure that these items are going in the correct place, depending on the type of terrain, the type of planet. And those go especially for the organics. I believe there were issues where people were finding all of the organics expected on a planet in one area. That won't be the case. It should now make sense for where they are on the planet, on the terrain, and also in the densities we expect them. And also, I do believe we should have more types now seen.
Oh, nice.
But don't quote me on that. I'm trying to remember what the check-in logs are. But yes, the like on the picture I'm seeing at the moment is that red, very red sunset with the eclipsing planet above, and those grasses there. That's what I'm talking about with the scatter there. Those additional items on the floor, the grasses, all of the stuffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's also worth mentioning that this will change organics on the non-atmospheric planets too, right? So stuff that maybe you could see in Horizons, please correct me if I'm wrong, might be in a more natural place on the planet now.
Yes, yeah. So everything that was in the game for Horizons regarding that, the organics on the atmosphereless worlds, they still exist. They are still a thing in Watson. However, their exact placement is different because, well, the planet system which generates the thing they're on is different. And it has to hook into the scatter system for them to be placed somewhere better. And now what that should mean is that you'll see them wider across the planet rather than in one spot exactly here. But hopefully you should be able to tell the visual clues about where they're turning up and predict where they should be on the planet, as well as, of course, using your handy dandy scanners.
So another thing with scatter, a lot of the players that have been playing the alpha, and a big part of the community actually, are SRV drivers, racers. I know obviously that you've been seeing this, that obviously with the new scatter it's had a bit of an impact on some of the drivability on the planets. Could you tell us if that's changing, how that might look different?
Yeah. So the version that you saw in the alpha had both the prototype planets and the prototype scatter. Now the prototype planets had a little bit too much noise. When I say noise, I mean undulation, uppy downy bits everywhere, even on the bits which were supposed to be flat. So we did pay specific attention to those to say, make sure you got the contrast in the terrains. Things which are flat are supposed to be flat. Things which are not flat are as bumpy as they should be. And the density and placement of the scatter items has been improved. So yes, you should be able to navigate where it looks like you should be able to navigate.
Yeah. I mean, it is a phenomenal piece of work. So one of the screenshots that we saw, and I'll bring it up in a second now, was of a planet or a moon that had, mostly it looked like dark sort of brown grey soil, and it also had an area that was, I'm assuming ice or snow, that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about how planets are sort of the terrain, or maybe I'm getting this wrong, terrain are mixed together to provide different sort of areas on the planet? So you've got potentially in that image we saw earlier of an SRV on like a desert plain, it looked like, and that's kind of thing. Can you just talk a bit about how that might work?
And sure, yes. So the planets themselves aren't just a mesh which colors are put on. Each triangle in the mesh kind of knows its type of material it's on, its type of terrain, and that material can be sandy, it can be dusty, it can be rocky, it can be snowy, it can be icy, combinations of the lot of them.
Yeah.
And where they are within the type of terrain they're on is generated in this pre-baked terrain information. But their placement across the planet depends on these noise graphs I mentioned before, how we combine the different programs which are generating the surface. And you get, so you've got an example of a icy area on a planet there, which it has a transition area into a rocky area next to it. And most of that world looks like a small rocky body, just with a deposit of a different material across there. So, yeah. We have different materials across the planet. The planets in the horizon had 3 main materials, which were metallic or rocky or ice. Here, well, similar, where I've got dust, or we've got ice, or we've got rock, or we've got metal rich. We've got examples where it's mixtures of them, and there's all different, as I say, interpretations of what that is. Is that rocky thing? Is it dusty? Is it also? I don't remember every single possible combination there is, but yeah, there's enough, and it blends into each other. And trying to think of what else might be handy to know on that.
I mean, you've covered quite a lot there, to be honest. I think chat very happy.
Phew.
Okay, so last couple of questions. Things that people in the community have been asking about. Different coloured stars, Dr. K. Can we expect any of that?
Okie dokie. Well, we've had different coloured stars since the alpha. However, the question of will the stars be a different colour? Most of the areas of the game have had a little uplift, or they've had a change, or the procedure's a little different. One of those things is the stars themselves. First of all, how do they look through an atmosphere? One of the biggest changes we've made, it's not something we've chatted about much in this stream, however, is that Elite will now be using a wider range of light values and using a more PBR model for shaders, physically based rendering. And so all the intensities of starlight would need to be changed, but also the colors used and how the colors saturate everything else or not. So yes, you can expect the visuals to be somewhat different. Fingers crossed, in my opinion, hopefully somewhat better.
I mean, I think we can pretty much say already from the alpha, with what we've seen in the alpha, that even, and I'm guessing this is down to some of the physics-based rendering, but the stuff that was even in the game before, with the lighting looks nicer now. It just looks like, a more modern version, I guess, of the graphics.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, and I do have some imagery to go with this. This is one we've been asked a lot, Dr. K, and this is specifically about atmospheres. So as we know, you can go down onto a planet in Odyssey, in the alpha, and you can look around the sky, and it might look different than it did in Horizons. Can you give us a bit of information about other types of sort of atmosphere colours, all that sort of thing that we can see, and how that even works, I guess, in Odyssey?
Oh, of course. So yes, in Horizons itself, there were no atmospherics. There were fog, there were volatiles, slightly misty stuff, which was based off the color of the surface of the planet. The big draw with Odyssey is, yes, we're unlocking classes of planets to land on, and those with thin and tenuous atmospheres.
Yeah.
And now those familiar with exploration will know that there's different atmosphere classes based on what the primary compound in that atmosphere is. And that has an effect on how light behaves and travels through it. So what people have seen in the alpha, again, has been not had its final pass collection of mappings for how the atmospheres behave. And I think a lot of people saw basically grey and then a little bit of a pink hue. Now, what we're seeing now in this stream of photos is a more up-to-date balance and a lot of variety depending on the atmosphere classification.
Right.
So when you look at the atmosphere, when you see stuff here on Earth, there's a lot of different things happening in optics. So I think someone in the chat even requested I mention things like Rayleigh and Mie scattering.
Sure.
So a quick rundown of what the model does. Rayleigh scattering is dealing with how light scatters off teeny, tiny molecules, things which are typically described as colorless gas. Still, how light refracts through it depends on the wavelength of light itself and also the size of the atoms and the displacement of them involved. So here on Earth, when it's not horribly overcast like it is today where I am, you have a nice blue sky during the day, you have a yellow, orange, red sunset, and that is due to Rayleigh scattering. It's scattering the high-frequency blue light towards your eyes during the day, and at the end of the day, when you're looking through all of that atmosphere to see the star, all that blue light's been scattered away, you're left with the red.
Right, okay.
That's a very basic rundown of that. Now, Mie scattering, M-I-E, that is scattering the light across and through larger compounds, larger collections of particles, things which would have more color, like a colored gas, typically, or even if they're colorless, they still give a different look. You'd tend to see, say, on a clear day, if you're looking out across the sea, I grew up by the sea, by the way, you might see haze around the sun and haze around the horizon. That's from Mie scattering. But there's also other bits to play, such as ozone absorption. Ozone, in our upper atmosphere, where there's no holes, of course, is O3, the 3 oxygen atoms, and it absorbs certain wavelengths of light more than others. In this case, green a little bit, and that means that we get our yellow sunsets here on Earth rather than it looking a little greenish first. Now, going around back rather to the game, we have Rayleigh scattering, we have Mie scattering, we have ozone absorption, and a few other handles to pull to see what would happen with an atmosphere which was mostly nitrogen. Ours is mostly nitrogen. Nitrogen oxygen mixed like ours, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, all sorts of stuff. They will have different scattering coefficients there, and so you end up with different colors of sky at different times, different tones. That's why you're getting the variation there. But also, different classifications of atmospheres tend to be on, or can be on, different types of bodies. For example, if you got your argon or your neon or your helium atmospheres, those are very low temperature ones, tend to be far away from the main star there, across these tenuous bodies, and they will give a very different look, and they scatter light in a different way than you'd expect. So that gives us a nice broad range of visuals I'm hoping to see in people's elite photo collections, please. I
mean, I'm pretty sure from chat's reaction when we showed the images earlier, and then especially the those atmospheric images, I think chat are very much ready to be getting out there and taking some great photos. So Stellar Screenshots is going to be quite something once we launch Odyssey. But yeah, I mean that's all my questions. Is there anything else, Dr. K, that you wanted to bring up, or are you happy with that?
Oh, I think I'm happy with that.
Nice.
I am just going to respond to something which has come up in chat. Well, why
Sure.
can you see the stars through the atmosphere?
Okay.
How dare? Now, there is. This is a video game. This is a topic we come back to every so often, in that it is both a balance between we want to make it scientifically plausible, but also have a strong artistic direction, a strong artistic feel. There are some areas where it's nudged a little bit this way or a little bit that way, just because it gets a nicer end result. Now, the thing with seeing these stars through the atmosphere there, the atmospheres being unlocked for Odyssey are tenuous. We're talking about 10,000th to 1,000th, 100th or so of Earth atmosphere.
Right.
It is not anywhere near as thick as Earth-like. And one of the ways that has been represented at the moment has been letting some of the stars still poke through that, just so that there's still going to be that contrast, that difference when, well, not promising anything coming out in the future, but, keeping doors open and whatnot.
Yeah. Makes sense. I think you've answered that perfectly. Chat can't have any more arguments, I don't think.
I don't think so. I have something that I would like to raise, but I'm reticent to take the topic away from planetary tech, because that was such a nice thing to get insight into, and obviously I've seen chat getting just being stunned by how beautiful those images were. But so we have all of that to come and be excited for. There was something we very briefly mentioned earlier on, and I was hoping you could comment on that for us, Kay, which is optimization and performance in the alpha versus what we might expect at launch. I know before the stream you had maybe something that you wanted to sort of explain a little bit or share with the players. I know it's been a point of concern for some and others a little bit of uncertainty. So maybe we could clarify some points.
So first of all, I just want to stop chat who are excited about, as if I've hinted something which is coming. No. Did not insinuate that. No. In terms of the other thing, yes, I mostly covered it a little earlier to do with the occlusion and how there was fear that we just hadn't bothered putting occlusion systems in the game, but no, we have. It's okay. We're on it. Things will be better. More parts of it will be enabled for the release. In terms of other general performance, yes, we are working on it at the moment. There are a lot of aspects, a lot of levers to pull in a project like this, like any video game. There's various different programming disciplines, there's various different art things to consider in balancing memory usage, CPU usage, GPU usage, throughput of it all, churn. And it's something that's, whilst you can make general course optimizations as you're going, you do need to fine tune it to work the best it can optimally together, kind of at the end. Once you've got all of the pieces there, once you know what you're working with, and yeah, it's certainly something which I am quite enthusiastic about. And yeah,
nice.
It's coming along.
Great. All right then. Zach, if you're happy, I'm happy. If chat's happy, if Kay, you're happy.
I'm always happy.
Great, that's really good to hear. I don't know where I was going with this. I think I was going to say something like, if there's anything else you'd like to say to the players at this point who've participated in the alpha or enjoying watching those who are, I suppose now would be the best time.
Well, basically, I just want to say thank you very much, both for your excitement, for your dedication, for your testing of the alpha, for your enthusiasm. Basically, a very sincere thank you. Something I touched upon earlier in the stream is that it really does rekindle that fire. It really does make it worth it to see people having a go at it, enjoying it, and feeling excited, seeing it all for the first time. So basically, a very big thank you, all of you, and stay awesome.
And I know Bruce said, chat's happy. The thing with chat when we have Dr. K on is that they probably would be happy if we stayed on stream for,
true.
5 or 6, 7 hours just talking about how elite and how the planets are made. But we will call it there. So thank you, Dr. K, for joining us again. And obviously we do hope to have you back on in the future. It's great always to hear your insights on the game.
Brilliant. It's my pleasure as always. Thank you for inviting me. And hopefully see you all soon.
Yeah. So we'll switch
Thank you
back.
very much.
Yeah, we'll switch back now to, unfortunately, just me and Bruce, as we sort of sign off on the stream. So wow, what a great insight, 2 great guests, right, Bruce?
Yeah, that was really great. It's always a pleasure to have any guests from the dev team on, but having Piers, the game director himself, as well as the brilliant Dr. K, was wonderful. Yeah, to give some insights there that otherwise we might not always get to hear about.
Yep. So I mean, chat, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the imagery. I saw a few people saying, can we release those images separately? We'll look into that over the next couple of days, potentially, but we'll check on that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, chat. We will be back on Thursday with another stream. We're actually going to do a Mail Slot Mayhem stream on Thursday, which is going to be a fun one. So if you don't know what that is, basically we've got, I think, Bruce, we've got some guests, or we're in the process of getting some guests lined up to have a go at some tricks around the mail slots for starports.
Yeah, that's about the size of it. So we've already reached out to a handful of people. We may ask a few more. If you're interested, go to our Twitter page and reply to the post that's asking for anyone who would like to participate. The idea is sort of a mail slot Olympics type thing where people do like flips and boosting through the station entrances, that kind of stuff. And we're going to judge it. Should be fun. So yeah, please join us for that. Something I would like to mention is I can sort of tell from the chat and from behind the scenes that there have been a couple of issues with the Twitch drops this week. It sounds like they're coming through, but possibly the flight suit has been replaced by something else. We're going to look into it and we'll sort all of that out and let you know what the deal is at the time of the next stream. So hang tight. Like I say, at the beginning of the stream, I said we're going to have Twitch drops basically every stream from now until and including launch itself on the 19th of next month. So you won't be missing out. Don't worry, guys. We'll take care of you.
Yep. And I guess another important thing to mention, not just the streams that's happening on Thursday, tomorrow is the launch of Phase 4 of the Alpha. We'll have more details on that tomorrow, as well as obviously times and stuff like that. So stay tuned to our socials and the forums for that. But yeah, otherwise, any words of wisdom, Bruce, to end the stream?
Oh, you're asking the wrong person.
I know I am. That's why I said it.
You literally just said goodbye to one of the smartest guests we're ever going to have, and you ask me for a nugget. Blimey, I'm really on the spot here. Literally in front of thousands of people. You had to do it.
I like to do
now,
it every stream, at least once.
I don't know, guys. Try and do some stretches when you wake up in the morning. I guess.
Yep, it's good advice.
Eat your greens. Yeah.
Cool.
And have fun playing Elite Dangerous, I guess.
Yep. And on that bombshell, we'll end the stream. So please do stick around while we find somebody to raid. It's going to be a big raid if a lot of you stick around. So be kind, be gentle if necessary with whoever we raid, and we'll see you on Thursday. So until then, 07 Commanders.
Thanks for watching, guys. 07.